Hey folks, Quill18 here, and welcome to another episode of Let's Play SimCity. This video is actually going to be me building a new city as a time-lapse, and why did I do it this way? Well, because I was playing this game really late at night, and I was chatting with some friends, and I couldn't really do a voiceover at the time, so I figured, well, I'll record it anyway, because I feel like playing, and if I feel like playing a game, I usually record it. And then, here we go with a little post-commentary. So we're starting a new area. We're starting in Barleycorn Point. This is in the same region that we've been playing lately with some friends, and all of us were starting some new cities and developing a new region, so we figured we'd start things off. Now, this site is actually kind of interesting in that it has no resources whatsoever that you can bank on. There's no coal, no ore, no oil. Nothing like that, and it's not even particularly flat or open, so it's going to be hard to come up with, a really high population grid. On the other hand, you can obviously always make some money with tourism, especially it is kind of a nice place to look at, and it was definitely my goal here to come up with a somewhat less grid-like design. In fact, I think the only truly straight area is the ones that I just laid down now for the industry. Other than that, I'm messing around with a lot of curves and things, and it's going to be really interesting when the city gets to a higher population, because the sort of structure of where the road comes in to my city, being on that little tiny spit of land over there divided from the rest of it, makes it maybe a little bit hard to sort of, I don't know, organize all the incoming traffic, because usually that's where the bottleneck is. That being said, you're going to see later on in this video that the bottleneck or the traffic congestion won't actually be at the entrance of the city in this particular case. It's going to be a little further in, but I'm sure that's going to change over time as the population density increases, and also as it is nice since we have the financial building in the region that we can just take out 100,000 simoleon loans right off the bat. But yeah, as the city changes, the bottlenecks are going to change over time, especially depending on how much traffic you have coming in and out of your city. In particular, once you start building the various tourism buildings, if you build an Expo center and then you start an event, well, that results in a huge influx of traffic. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens at that point. And part of the problem with the Expo centers is if for some reason where it is leads to horrible traffic jams, moving it's not a huge option because it's so expensive to put down. You're going to actually see me do a fair amount of kind of back and forth transformations in this city as I make some adjustments, but the Expo Center is really not something you want to make an adjustment for. So I've been wanting to really play around with this sort of tree-like subdivision structure for a while, to really encourage that any traffic that goes on any particular road is really just local traffic, not much throughfare at all. And the real challenge with that, or through traffic, I guess I should say, the real challenge to that is if you want to have a bigger subdivision. For example, this one here is actually, the one on the right-hand side that you can see right now, is actually fairly large, right? There's a lot of vehicles there, and there's only going to be the one entrance point. Well, that is a possible bottleneck, but you're going to see later on that I'm going to connect the sort of backside, the north end of that subdivision area, to another avenue that runs up on the northern side of my city. And the challenge is really to discourage anyone from just driving through this subdivision to get from one side of the city to another. Instead, it's more like, well, anyone who lives in this subdivision can go either north or south to leave the area without creating anything else. So I'm going to be playing a lot with that. The curbs is partially to force myself out of the grid, although you're going to see here that I'm actually coming out with a pretty dense structure anyway, and what I really need to do is force myself away from these ultra-dense cities. It doesn't matter if you're using curbs or straights, the density can still be really packed in there. Yeah, so the goal in this one is, I don't think I can have a really huge, vibrant industry. Part of the reason is the wind in the city is blowing from left to right, and there's very few little areas where I can really put in a lot of industry here without having it blow all over the place. One of the places is indeed that little sort of, I don't know, peninsula, I guess, a little spit of land at the bottom right corner of the screen is fairly isolated and blowing away. I think later on in the video you're going to see in the top right section where I currently have some of that commercial. I think that's going to be rezoned to industrial at some point, just to give people a few extra jobs. Now, the pollution's not going to be quite as critical because I'm actually going to build a university pretty early in the city because, again, in a region that's a fairly developed region, so we have universities unlocked already. So as a result, I can plop that down right away. I don't have to work my way up through grade schools and high schools to unlock it. And universities educate everyone perfectly fine. And Sims in this game are kind of ageless, so it doesn't matter what kind of schools you provide. You know, whether that's good or bad, I don't know, but that's the abstraction they went with, so there you have it. That top right area here that connects the mainland is not an area that I'm particularly happy with. You're going to see me transform it a few times over this video. And I believe like the sort of hook that's being shaped here with the avenue, at some point a lot of this is going to get bulldozed and rebuilt. But I think you can see the sort of general idea that I'm going with. No one should be driving through any areas. That being said, some of the drives that people have to take are quite long, which may or may not be a problem. We're going to see. I think the long, sort of more flowing routes are the way to go as opposed to grids. And a lot of people in my videos, especially even early on, right before the big traffic patch, people were like, "Oh, you got to build more intersections to give people ways to get around congestion." Well, it doesn't actually work that way. People don't really route around congestion that well. It doesn't even work very well in real life, right? If you've ever been in a city that's in a grid-like pattern, you're going to have horrible traffic problems. And the problem is that intersections in real life, but also in the game, slow down traffic, because those are places you have to stop or at least slow down to accommodate people who are turning left and right and all that kind of stuff. So those are real bottlenecks. So you really want to minimize those as much as possible. You can see I've got some bad traffic here, but it's because I'm zoning so quickly. The roads are jammed with moving trucks that are causing a lot of the problems. Once people are sort of settled into their houses, this traffic kind of clears up a little bit. And of course, I don't have any public transit or anything set up yet. And also, there is still just there we go, university comes in really early, right? My population is only at 5K. It's probably too early to put in, especially a university, but, you know, because I've gone without any education at all for quite a long time. But in this case, I really wanted to get the high-tech industry because I was hoping to make this a really nice place to live. And I was also going to go for a higher wealth place. I've talked about before in some of my videos that you don't want to just place high-end parks indiscriminately. First of all, the parks don't actually help with the density directly, although it gives people kind of a local place to shop, so it can help out kind of indirectly that way. What parks and things do, the high-end parks anyway, they really increase land value. So they increase the wealth of your homes, which is good in a sense, except that some of the industries and things need low wealth workers to work the jobs, right? Because you can imagine, you know, like in real life, you need people who are well, I mean, everyone is skilled, but at different levels. In this particular case, I think the high wealth workers really represent people like executives and things like that, right? So industries only need a certain amount of executives. Now, I think that when you get into the higher tech industries, then they want more and more high wealth workers, right? The sort of like rich, very educated people. We want engineers and that sort of thing, as opposed to just people to work the assembly line. So that was sort of my goal for the city, is to come out with something that's pretty high wealth, pretty high educated. I also was going to build, I was going to try to research some projects at the university, so build some of the add-ons and get people to learn. I think the first thing I start studying in here is the solar panel condenser, because I've heard that it's quite good. It doesn't take a whole lot of space, and it generates a lot of power. So I figured it'd be good to unlock that for the entire region, because that's what it is. I'm pretty sure it unlocks for the entire region altogether. So it's going to be really nice to have access to that overall. Other than that, I am powering things right now with wind, and part of me thinks that, oh, maybe instead I should have started the project for it, because I think there's a higher end wind turbine, and so maybe I should have done that, but whatever. The wind power would have been better for this city because I have great amount of wind power, but I think overall for the region, the condenser is a better choice. So you can see here, I'm starting to experiment with the idea of creating these loops. So now it's technically possible for people to drive through some of my neighborhoods to get somewhere else. But I'm going to be sort of manipulating the roads just to try to ensure that most of the time, driving through a neighborhood will not represent the shortest path for vehicles, so it'll discourage them from taking that. Of course, they will adjust themselves somewhat based on traffic congestion. I still say that the traffic congestion weighting is not where it should be. I still think they add fixed amount of values. So if a road is totally congested, people will look for an alternative up to a point. They won't go ridiculously out of their way, which is, relatively realistic. Oh, hey, I'm checking out Briarstone's world, because he's working. You should check out his channel. It's youtube.com/Briarstone. And he's made a few SimCity maps where the designs are actually based off of like various video game logos and things like that. So it was too early to actually see his logo in this one. This is Anime Hero City that he's experimenting with circles, and I think we're gonna come back and look at it some more later on. But I like his bridge. At this point, I go back to my city and I kind of complain that my bridges are boring and flat because there's not enough kind of elevation next to the river. There's not enough, like, I think the river is too narrow and not elevated enough, so I've just got these flat causeways, which is a little bit dull. On the other hand, they're pretty easy to work with. Yeah, so that was Briarstone's layout. That's worth checking out. And, I excessively bulldoze over there, but I think I realized that, like, yeah, okay, that was going to do that, and I probably could have worked it a little bit differently. But I was like, I've got the extra cash. Let's just be lazy. We'll bulldoze it and then regenerate the roads. I'm not sure. It's possible that the bulldozing of the power plant was a mistake. I can't remember. So here I am, still experimenting with these various loops and things. So now at this point, I've actually got an entire loop of an avenue that goes throughout the city. This particular structure I think looked nice, but I think it ends up going away later because it ends up being an effective shortest path for a lot of people, and that becomes a major bottleneck, so we have to get rid of it. It's either that or maybe I had to make room for the Expo Center. We'll see. Let's keep watching. So, let's see. I mean, overall, I'm kind of digging it. I'm forcing myself to break out of the pattern a little bit, but there's still definitely too much structure, and I need to, I don't know, maybe next time, instead of using the curve tool, the arc tool, rather, because this is all the arc tool, maybe I should just use the curve tool and just freeform draw. The problem is I'm like incredibly shaky with the mouse, so my roads would end up looking like they've been in 3 or 4 dozen earthquakes, so that's not good either. Finally, it's time to introduce some services, so that is definitely something that you can do. You can live without a lot of these services for a really long time. Fire is probably one of the first things you have to put in, but other than that, you know, you can go without a hospital for a long time, and in fact, you can go without a police station for a really long time, so save your money. And definitely a school. Again, you know, my plans with the university is definitely a little bit different here. So there's, again, you know, I'm closing a loop, and I'm going to keep an eye on that section to make sure that people aren't using that to drive through too much. And I think, in fact, that they will, because you can definitely see that going from one avenue to another, it's shorter to go through that little neighborhood than it is to stay on the avenues. So I think I end up breaking that connection at some point. I'm still using low-density roads to connect to my avenues. That way they don't create any traffic lights, which slow down the intersections. You can see here there's definitely some people somewhere are using that loop for something that I don't want, so we can't have that road section there. I'm intentionally leaving the... I'm going from like the high density avenue to the medium density avenue on my way into the city, and you can see that little block. There's sort of an intersection there, and that conceivably can slow down traffic. It can create a bottleneck as people go from the 3 lanes to the 2 lanes. But I was intentionally leaving it in there for a couple of reasons. One in particular is people can use that sort of pseudo intersection as a place to make U-turns. Because as I've said before, these sort of long roads and minimized intersections are great for traffic. The problem is people need to be able to make U-turns every now and again. Otherwise, they have to drive down the entire length of an avenue before they can turn around. So having a few strategic intersections is a good idea, and especially if they're intersections without lights, right? So again, if you have a medium density road or lower intersectioning an avenue, that will provide a sort of soft intersection where avenue traffic can drive right through without stopping at the lights, but it can also do a U-turn if required. And that can be a fake sort of stub of a road. You just take a dirt road and literally just like drag it through the avenue by like 1 tile, and that's enough to provide a U-turn. It can cause some weird traffic bottlenecks though, as people like occasionally will make a turn down the dirt road and then try to turn around and they're slowed down. So I've stopped using that trick as often, because it doesn't seem to work quite as well as I hope in all cases. But this sort of 3-lane avenue to 2-lane avenue actually works pretty well. And of course, if you have actual streets, those are totally fine as well. So here are letting the game run a little bit, and mostly at this point I'm trying to watch traffic, watch the flow of traffic. There is a lot of in and out traffic from the university, so that might be something to explore later on. You can see right now people are leaving the university and creating a bit of a bottleneck there, getting back on the avenue. That being said, it's not necessarily the end of the world. I mean, you can only accelerate that so much. I guess I could make it faster if the other side of that road by the university was connected to the other avenue. The problem is I'm really worried that would create a shortest path somewhere. I might still do something there, make something like a little bit wiggly to again discourage anyone else from ever taking that route, but offering an alternative way to leave the university and maybe reduce the bottleneck a little bit. So here it looks like, yeah, I'm going to connect the rail over here because I'm hoping for my city to grow fairly quickly, and one way to do that is to offer you people another way into town that will effectively double the population growth rate of my city. Not to mention, hey, my screen just blanked out. There we go. Not to mention my oh, right, that's what happened. I think the game crashed, and so I had to. I think what was it? Oh, that's right. I was installing another game in the background and brought up the Windows. Like you must like. This requires administrator access. This is okay, but it grays out your whole screen. Well, when you're recording a game with fraps and you tab out of that game, or that gray screen comes up, it tends to crash the game. So I can't blame SimCity for that at all. And in fact, the fact that it auto saves every 2 minutes onto the server actually, saved me from having a massive rollback in this case. So hey, for the win. But yeah, I did have to rebuild that little section, as I recall. I don't think I lost too much other progress though. So yeah, again, I'm trying to let my city grow organically without fiddling too much. The profit is great. Considering this is all like tax revenue profit, right? Money is coming in very well. And then I'm like, oh yeah, but it's not coming in fast enough. Let's build a cheap casino. Again, I do plan on putting in the Expo Center at this point, but A, I don't have the money for that right now, and B, I wasn't entirely sure where to put it. So I figured a cheap casino it's really cheap. Right, you can plop it down, run it for a little while, and then destroy it after a few days and come out ahead if you want. But my plan wasn't to destroy it right away, but it was like, well, I'm not sure if this is where I want it forever, but it's fine enough. That being said, a casino does bring in crime, so I figured it was a decent time to bring in the police station. May as well build it right across from the casino. That is fine. Again, your service buildings, never have them come in on an avenue near some intersection that's ever going to be really busy, because especially right now, at some point they will patch it. They've got to fix in to improve this, but right now what will happen is your vehicles will try to leave the garage, like the fire station garage or the police station garage or the ambulance garage, and the traffic is blocked, the road is blocked, so they're not going to be able to turn in to the road, and they'll never be able to service anything. So I'm putting them on side streets that will not be packed, and I'm trying not to put them right at intersections, because if there's going to be any traffic congestion, it's going to be at the intersection itself. So usually I try to pull away by a few cars length at least from the intersection, and much more than that if it's going to be a major road with any sort of traffic whatsoever. And then all of a sudden, I get Godzilla. Like, what? So apparently, well, I know this already. Like, Godzilla, I think, unlocks when you burn a certain amount of traffic or garbage. Now, I haven't actually burned any garbage in the city, but I guess it unlocks region-wide. So he spawns in your city somewhere, and he makes his way to your garbage dump, and he eats all your garbage, and then he buries himself in the ground. It says that the lizard is dead. I'm not 100% sure that I'm convinced about that. I mean, it's awfully nice of him to have eaten all my trash. On the other hand, he did destroy a whole lot of houses in my city and my water tower as well, which had to be replaced. Still, it was kind of funny. So here we are, we're going to the Tantive Corverton, which is a reference to a certain science fiction film, and you can hopefully identify this symbol. I'll give you a moment. If you haven't, that is the Rebel Alliance symbol from Star Wars. So you can go back and pause and look at his awesome work. So, in the past, Briarstone has made some of these designs in sandbox mode. This is the first time he's done it in a real city setting, and he said it was a bit of a challenge to build the big design and also not go broke. But it seems to have worked out. And in fact, later on, he's talking about how the fact that his city is working pretty effectively actually with that design, which is pretty awesome. And you can imagine why. Like, again, if you go back and pause and watch the layout, here's me fiddling with these stupid university roads, which I haven't really done before. It ends up being a stupid design, B, it doesn't end up being particularly useful, so I think some of it gets replaced at some point, but there you go. But yeah, Briarstone's design actually works out to not have too many traffic bottlenecks. So maybe he will later when the city grows bigger, but I mean, that wasn't the primary purpose of this. So I'm building lots and lots of amphitheaters and things like that, trying to get that wealth up, which is really a lot of my goal here. Quite like that little area. It's a shame that road creates such a bottleneck, but for now, it's okay. So I'm trying to level up the university, keeping an eye on the number of students that are coming in. I think at some point I'm going to end up having to build a second dormitory just to keep the numbers as high as possible before we can unlock something else. Actually, I might have just gone AFK at this point to get a drink. That's entirely possible. Yeah, so I find that these cities, especially these super dense ones like this that don't look like little suburbs, I think they look kind of ugly when they're just all the little houses. But they start to look so nice when you get the bigger buildings, especially the higher wealth buildings. They really look good. I love the high wealth buildings. And then when you get to the skyscrapers, low, medium, or high wealth skyscrapers, it doesn't matter. They all look amazing, especially at night. Just fan-freaking-tastic. So I think at this point, I'm thinking about places to put that expo center. I'm thinking up here because it's close to the train station. I'm thinking down here because it's close to the road traffic. In any case, anything in this area is going to be pretty accessible to tourists because there's a nice avenue there. So whether they come in from the road or they come in from the train station, they're going to be fine. I'm increasing my taxes here. It looks like up until you get to a certain point, you can really go up to about 11% taxes for the low and medium wealth and not really make them too cranky. And it looks like about 10% with the high wealth. Why did I delete those buildings there? I think because they were causing a little bit of a traffic problem. I have found, because people actually pull in and out of buildings, right? Not just service stations. So if you're in a busy area of street, having buildings that face right onto the avenues appears to actually be a pretty poor idea. Now, you still have to do it to a certain extent because otherwise you're wasting a lot of space, but ideally, if you can have blocks that sort of operate on the side. Oh, here we go. This is my first attempt to place the Expo Center, and it's not going to work for some reason. I can't get it in there, and I realize after the fact it's because the ground is sort of tilted. You can see just behind the buildings on my avenue to the south, there's a bit of a line. That's the slope, and the slope is getting in the way, which is why I can't place them anywhere. So I probably could have just gotten rid of the buildings and then placed them, and then I was like, you know what? Maybe this area up here is actually going to be better. Pull more traffic away, because that's actually not a traffic bottleneck up here. It's mostly going the other way in the city. So I think this way is going to be fine, people coming in from the highway, but also the people coming in from the railroad is going to be a lot easier and closer. So yeah, here we're running into some more traffic or power issues, and I'm actually providing a lot of power for the region right now in our little neck of the woods. So I thought, I should probably improve that. And again, people are complaining about fires in the other areas too, so I'm like, I better improve that too. Here I didn't leave myself with enough money to actually start the first event, which means the Expo Center is not going to be totally profitable at this time, but it should be better. And then you can see that the traffic is starting to get pretty big. I don't actually have any public transit in my city yet. It's one of those other things I keep saying, it's like a huge priority, but at the same time, I want, you need enough power, but I also wanted the Expo Center down to start making profit. So I'm pretty sure I'm waiting here to be able to have enough money to start my first event, while also keeping the power up. And then, because I think I maxed out on bonds last time I checked. And then I think public transit is going to be the next priority. Yeah, the profit is still coming in pretty well though. I can't complain about that. The money situation has been fine this entire time, and that's without any special resources. But that's because, the taxes can really work out to a lot once the city is still small. The problem is when the city gets bigger and requires more and more and more services, the pacing of your tax dollars is not always going to keep up. So that's why you have to really, find other sources of revenue, which is totally reasonable, right? So, these expo centers and that sort of thing. So, although I guess I do have the casino, which is also making money, so that's pretty helpful right now. There we go, finally enough to start the motocross, and I'm pretty sure the public transit is starting to be a priority. I like, the buildings are upgrading. It's starting to look a little bit like a city right now. I'm not super happy with the bend that I have in the avenue near the Expo Center, just down the hill from it, near the university dormitory. I hate that little sort of kink in the road. I might have to just bulldoze that little section and round it off a little smoother at some point. It's not an actual intersection though, so it's not like it's an actual problem, but it just feels stupid and crummy to me. Here's my event, easily filling up. Everyone coming off the train should more or less come directly to the Expo Center. Yeah, I'm actually possibly splitting my tourist load right now, because any tourists coming in through the front door are probably heading mostly to the casino and up until it's full, and then any tourists coming in from the train station are probably mostly going to the Expo Center, which probably means just a lot less traffic overall, although we're certainly still having a problem because, again, we don't have any buses. The fact that my avenue is on a loop means that later on it'll probably be really viable to put a nice kind of streetcar system there. A loop is probably less optimal than a straight line or just like a U shape, because the streetcars might still act a little funny, but it's still going to be better than sort of just a branching structure altogether. Ideally, you want your streetcars to only service one continuous set of road and not have to deal with a bunch of intersections and things, because they move kind of randomly-ish and make a lot of like kind of dumb decisions. So, oh yeah, here I'm deciding what kind of add-on to add to my university. So yeah, so that'll be pretty viable. The downside is that on a streetcar avenue, all intersections always create traffic lights. So you can't get away with the medium density road trick. On the other hand, then it means you can upgrade all your roads to high density, and there's not really a big problem with it. As long as you minimize the number of intersections, and as long as the number of people using your mass transit really benefits the additional see, I love this city. I think it's cool. Really benefits the additional sort of intersections that get created from having the streetcar avenue. It's kind of win-win overall. So yeah, I think this town is going to be fine. I suppose the only thing is that maybe it doesn't have a huge amount of avenues. The fact of the matter is, avenues hold more cars, but they don't necessarily help the traffic flow that much faster anyway. A little bit, yeah, especially since when they turn, they can, multi-lanes can turn at once. So 2 to 2 or 3 to 3. Which is why you never want an intersection in avenues where they don't match, because then you lose some of your optimal kind of... the real benefit from the avenue is being able to have multiple lanes make the corner at the same time. Apparently I was generating too much poop, so we had to upgrade the sewer station. I don't have an actual water treatment. Oh, here I am trying to place the bus terminal, figure out like what's the best place to put this. As again, I was trying to avoid having it right on the avenue itself. I think I may have wanted it to be a little closer to the front of my my place altogether, but it seemed fine. I'm putting down park and goes. What are they called? Park and rides. Around the city right now. The park and rides act as a normal bus stop, and they're not much more expensive, so they're pretty safe to put down. Obviously, they take up more space, is the one thing, but they're going to be slightly more effective than a conventional bus stop at actually reducing traffic. So I've been trying to place a kind of a core of them all over, and especially at the city entrance. And they do have a bit of a cap, it seems, so having more than one park and ride by the entrance to your city is definitely an option once your city grows. So yeah, I put a few of those, and then I fill in the gaps with actual bus stops, and then see how that goes. It seems to work pretty well. City continues to grow. I can't remember what they were complaining about, but there doesn't seem to be much of an unemployment problem. If anything, it's just that there's not enough workers to fill all my industry jobs, which is fine. I kind of like that. I'm not going to complain about that whatsoever. And funny thing is, there's still a demand for industry. Oh, here I'm trying to build the little medium density road connection and then have high density everywhere else. So you got to do kind of a silly little thing. Later on, again, we'll be able to get rid of that. And when we go up to streetcar avenues, which isn't going to happen in this video. There's not a need for the streetcars yet, but that is the plan going forward. So we'll see how that goes. So at some point, I'm going to do a little bit of rearranging down here. I think I do plan on growing the industry a little bit because there's demand for it. And industry makes a decent amount of money. So at some point, I'm going to replace all this commercial because these commercials aren't really getting a whole lot of shoppers because they're far away from my residential areas, right? So they're not really having any local shoppers. Theoretically, they might be getting tourists from outside, but even then, not that much. I think I overdo it on industry here. I think I'm going to come back and put some commercial right around the casino at some point. And if I don't, I really should. The balance of sort of residential to commercial is always kind of fun and interesting and challenging. Again, ideally you would like to have commercial within walking range of all your residences. Because the way that Sims work in this game is in the morning, X number of Sims leave a building to go to work. They work all day, they come home, and then after they come home, another X number of Sims leave the home to spend their money, right? They come home with money, they leave the home looking to spend their money to purchase happiness, and they can do that at commercial areas. And if there are commercial areas near enough to their home that they can walk, then they will just do that. So ideally, every building in your game every residence in your game should have a commercial area close enough that you can walk to it. And again, parks will sort of fulfill that role, although people will prioritize the commercial areas. So, really you don't want big commercial districts. And, some people say, well, that's not realistic. Big cities have these big commercial districts. Yeah, and big cities have horrendous traffic problems, right? This whole having suburbs with just residents and then having a central downtown core with just commercial, turns out to not be a brilliant idea. Now, you do need kind of a business district, and that certainly happens. But things like shopping and stuff like that, no, there's a reason that big box stores open up in all the suburban sort of residential areas. Any place with a decent amount of houses, someone will plop down a Walmart and a Costco and some outlet stores or something like that. And it actually makes a lot of sense because you don't want people commuting far and wide just to do some basic shopping. And you always have little corner stores, convenience stores, little pharmacies all over like in residential areas, and that's the way to do it. It makes sense in real life, and it makes a ton of sense in SimCity when, again, you can control that sort of walking percentage, encourage people to walk as much as possible. Again, I gotta keep shaking my mouse around because every now and again my screen blanks. I think this area right here with the university has a lot of potential to be really pretty later on, assuming that I can find some sort of artistic bone in my body and put in some pretty parks or something like that and nice little walkways. I can't guarantee that it's ever going to happen. My city is starting to look a little bit better now that they've got, actual buildings to look at, and it's just not like spotted little crummy little things. Here I am putting down a little port. This is not a trade port. Again, I'm just trying to make people coming to my city faster, just so it can grow a little bit faster. A little bit of tourism is going to get created from there, which means I really should have a bit of a commercial area down there to have the tourists go somewhere to shop. They probably won't actually make it. Well, they may at time make it all the way to my casino or make it to my Expo Center, especially if there's public transit there. But again, they do prioritize things that are close by. So really what you would do is set up a few shops down there and just have them shop there, and that commercial area would pretty quickly turn into a skyscraper. Alternatively, I could put down another casino down there, or maybe some other type of tourist attraction that would also be totally viable as just a way to, again, sink that tourism, right? So that they don't wander all over my city, but just like eat them as soon as they come off of the boat, so they don't add too much to my traffic problem. So we got the events running, and now the money is flowing really, really well. Once you can start chaining those events back to back to back at the Expo Center, you make a fortune. You do have to deal with the side effects of traffic, and it's not automatic. You do have to go there every day and start the new event, but it's pretty viable. Things are popping up, and I'm feeling good. Those high wealth skyscrapers look great. I don't know how much variation there is. It looks like all three of the ones you could see on screen there a second ago were the same sort of general design, so hopefully they can do something different. So here I am, in preparation with the idea that later on I'm going to want the streetcar avenue and therefore want to minimize the number of intersections. I bulldoze that down. I'm not happy with that curve. I'm probably going to go back and readjust it again later on. But for now it worked. And actually, as soon as I zoned it and it popped down like the huge block industry building, I was really happy with it. I said, oh, okay. I didn't think they'd be able to fit in, but hey, they do. So we are researching the condenser. I'm having a little bit of a power problem. And in fact, here you're going to see, because it's at night, when you build your solar panels, they do come with a little bit of power built in from the batteries, but I don't think they have a full load of power. So power keeps being an issue until like daytime hits. And then it's like, oh, well, I've got way too much power, but that's okay. Again, I'm pretty sure I'm feeding the region a lot. So there we go. I figured I'll just expand it for now. Who cares? I've got tons of money. May as well use the space. And yeah, there's still a bit of a power issue, but daytime is about to hit, which will resolve it. So I'm going to stop freaking out here in a second, spamming them out. Yeah, there we go. It's starting to say like charging photovoltaic cells. Power shortage, but there we go. Now it's improved. I'm just going to watch the power actually redistribute itself all over town, which takes a bit of a while just because of the way it sort of, paths around and redistributes and things. But that's okay. I'm fine with that. That's just part of the system. I'm not going to complain that it's not instantaneous or anything like that. It's sort of, the water works the same way. And some people have said before, like, oh, what are you doing? You're putting your water tower on low ground. The water is never going to go up. Well, water pressure is unaffected by gravity in this game. So if it's seeming like it's taking a while for water to get somewhere, it's just because water travels down the pipes in these little packets. And, apparently that was the end. See you next time, folks. Bye-bye.